So in this stage of development, I started focusing on adding game mechanics to the game. These game mechanics would actually help the game become playable, add objectives to the game, add the player interactions to the game. I actually started off using a door functionality, a door interactive game mechanic. Here, I'm actually just adding a collider to the door, making sure that the player can actually go in and hit a key to open up the door, interact with the door, and be able to walk through the door. Through a little bit of scripting and blueprinting, I was able to allow the player to press the O key to signal that they wanted to open the door, and then through this it would check if the door was open or closed and perform the correct animation from that. The correct animation was a timeline that I created for the door animation. This essentially would allow the player to hit O and then the door to swing on axis 90 degrees to be able to open it. When they hit O again, it would swing back reversed that way, back the way it came, negative 90 degrees, hence closing the door. So here I actually started to work on the pausing the menu widget. This would essentially allow the player to hit a button to pause the game, not allow any key input or time input into the factor, but allow those aspects of the game to be paused while the player may step away for a moment, and then the ability to unpause that menu as well. So here I was just making a widget blueprint, which essentially projects onto the screen over the player's viewport. When the screen is paused, those buttons are meant to represent specific options that the player can interact with, things like resume game, quit game, some text in there saying that it's paused, all the things that the player would actually need to for them to be indicated that the game is paused, and B, functionality to actually get back into the game once it was paused. Here I'm actually blueprinting the clicking of the buttons. Through here I was actually able to allow the player to click on the button and have it perform a certain action, whether it was continuing playing the game or quitting the game if they so choose. I went back into the event graph of the level blueprint, added a on-clicked P button, basically so that when they hit P, the game would pause. At this stage, I began work on making another UI asset and a game mechanic in the game, the minimap. The minimap basically allows the player to see above their location, see where they are in relativity to everything else in the level, and possibly pick up on something else in the level. Here, I'm actually just creating a texture render target that projects through the camera onto that viewport. When it's on the actual player, the player screen, that the render target will be processed there. Here I'm actually making that render target into a material, so that it can be projected onto that image plane right there. On the actual player screen, here I'm just adding that widget onto there, and making it to where I can actually see the render target right there. I actually just did some testing on it. As you can see, it's a little bit rough right now, but through the development, I was actually able to add a player indicator, just so that you can see where the player is, just because there's no physical format of the player. Here I'm just positioning the opacity, so just so that you can see just the player indicator, and not like the background or anything like that. Through this, I was actually able to get through the attaching of the spring arm, attach the arrow indicator above the player, just so that they can be seen on the actual minimap. So at this stage in development, I actually started to work on the portal functionality. The portal functionality would ideally allow the player to run into the trigger volume, and have them be teleported to another completely different space. This actually would render a camera to be pointing through the viewport of the other portal, basically telling the player, or allowing them to see rather, where the destination is leading to, and then teleporting to that location. Here I'm basically just setting up the overlap for the trigger volume, so that when they cross that space, they are actually running into that trigger, and then that trigger activates and teleports them to the desired location. Here, just doing a little more testing with functionality. I had a little bit of a hard time just doing the rotation values, just because they kept coming up on the opposite end, and facing the wrong way than what the camera was actually rendering. But here I actually just added 2 render targets, one for the first portal, one for the second portal. Through this, I was actually able to project the render target onto the surface of the other opposite portal, so that each opposite portal was seeing the view that was projected from the other portal. Meaning when you looked through the view of one portal, you would actually see out the view of the opposite portal through that render target.